In yet another sign, the fight for the White House centers on battleground states. Both presidential candidates are coursing through two of the must-wins today, Pennsylvania and Michigan. Vice President Kamala Harris just participated in an event hosted by the National Association of Black Journalists. That's in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, former President Trump will hold his first campaign event since Sunday's apparent assassination attempt. He will host a town hall in Flint, Michigan. Joining me now in a Fox Business exclusive is hedge fund billionaire John Paulson, noted for his famed and lucrative bet against the subprime mortgage market in 2007. He is also one of Donald Trump's most prolific fundraisers. Great to have you here, John. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Liz. Great to be here.
Have you spoken with the former president since this second assassination attempt?
We speak occasionally, yes.
Is he okay? Everything's okay?
You know, fortunately, he's in good shape. You know, it's shocking that there was two attempts, but, you know, thank God that he escaped both.
It's really shocking and really disturbing. You've been quite the dedicated fundraiser for the former president. I know you deal with deep-pocketed donors. In fact, the one that you held was the largest ever. Incredible amounts of money come in. How much of your time is spent speaking with the potential voting pool, meaning independent voters and more middle-class voters who could be swayed?
Well, you know, we did do this fundraiser in Florida. It was the first one out of the gate, and we went to, you know, the high donor supporters. I called them, most of them personally, and they were very enthusiastic about getting involved. So in that fundraiser, you know, off the bat was the largest ever. We raised $53 million for the president in one event, and that was about double what the what Biden, who was the candidate at the time, raised in New York a few weeks earlier.
Kamala Harris is going for the middle-class vote in a big way. She mentions it in every one of her speeches. How important do you think it is for, whether it's you or the other fundraisers on the Trump side, to really go for that group?
Well, I think the middle class is key for this election. And who's going to do better for the middle class? And, you know, when you look at the facts, the Trump policies come out better for the average American. Under his administration, the 4 years, average real wages grew about 6.5% during the 4 years. Under Biden, because of the high inflation, real wages have declined from where they were when he started. So that's why so many middle Americans are having difficulty with common expenses like rent and food.
I would imagine you still see inflation as too high.
I think it's coming down, but the important thing is keeping it down. And to do that, you need to bring down the deficit, bring down inflation, and bring down interest rates.
While inflation, as you say, has come down from the 40-year highs we saw back in June of 2022, it's still not at the Fed's target rate of 2%. The Fed is about, if you believe it, to cut rates tomorrow for the first time in 4 years. You and Trump supporters have cited high prices during the Biden administration, certainly as a huge problem for a lot of Americans. By that logic, wouldn't it be better, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but wouldn't it be better for the Fed to hold rates where they are in order to make sure that inflation is slayed?
That's a good question, Liz, but interest rates work with a lag. So the inflation is likely coming down, and right now the Fed's behind the curve. The Fed rates is between 5.25 and 5.5, and inflation is somewhere around 2.5 and trending lower. So real interest rates are almost 3%, and that's too high. So they should have been cutting well before this next meeting.
We should talk about tariffs, because during his Economic Club of New York speech here in New York recently, the president really pushed tariffs as an answer to bringing in a lot of tax revenue and almost as a panacea for wiping out the deficit, saving jobs, and of course, he says it would bring in enough revenue to even start a sovereign wealth fund. Wouldn't slapping 10% tariffs on imports, the intended effect would be, well, people would buy more American products. But if you buy less imported product, doesn't that bring down the revenue that would come from the tariffs that are on imported products?
Well, there would be some of that effect, but initially, if you put, let's say, 10% average, you know, the tariff plan is to be strategic, to focus on important industries and in areas of American manufacturing that have faced unfair competition. But we import somewhere over $3 trillion a year of merchandise goods. So if we put a 10% tariff on average, That would be $300 million, and a 15% tariff would produce $450 billion in revenues. That would go a long way to reducing the deficit.
You recently got to play journalist yourself when you interviewed former Trump administration from the first administration, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who famously, when Donald Trump's administration raised tariffs back in 2018 on things like aluminum and steel, famously held up the Campbell's soup can and said that any increase in the price, because those cans are aluminum, from those tariffs would be negligible. He got a lot of blowback from that, even not just from Democrats, but say, for example, then financial Senate leader Orrin Hatch of Utah, Republican, who said that the damage done to American manufacturers in the steel and aluminum sector far outweighed any benefit of the tariffs. Do you worry about unintended effects and that the whole thing kind of works in reverse?
I don't, Liz. You know, we face a $1.2 trillion merchandise trade deficit. We live in a very unfair world where we have almost no barriers, foreigners selling here, and we face lots of tariff and non-tariff barriers exporting abroad. And that's left to devastation in many of the communities across the U.S. So we have to fix that. We have to protect American workers. And one way to do that is by tariff. Now, tariffs not only protect American manufacturing, will create higher wages and more jobs, they'll also produce revenues. Now, in looking at the inflationary impact, we saw under Trump when he had tariffs before against China protecting steel, inflation was very low under Trump.
That is true.
It was only 1.9%.
That is true.
And under Biden, reached 9%, as you alluded to before, and averaged around 5%. So tariffs is only one part of the equation when you're looking at inflation. Other things to look at are energy and regulation. All have the potential to bring down inflation.
Others would argue, too, you throw in a pandemic and the supply chain snafus, and that really added in great part to the inflation that we saw. This all may come front and center to you because there is chatter that you would possibly be named Treasury Secretary if Donald Trump wins. Let's just play what if. If you were Treasury Secretary, what mistake do you perceive is a big one the current administration has made that you would first attempt to reverse or fix?
Well, I think the big issues we'll face immediately as Treasury Secretary are tax policy. And the difference between the Trump administration and Harris is very, very different. Trump wants to extend the current very successful tax policy, which was implemented in 2017. The Biden-Harris group, on the other hand, wants to change that. They want to raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%. They want to raise the capital gains rate from 20% to initially 39%. Now they flip-flop back to 28%.
That's for people, the unrealized capital gains tax.
For people that's for making realized capital gains.
Right, but for people making realized gains, but unrealized for people making $100 million or more. But let me just quickly ask you about the U.S. dollar. How important is the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency to remain the reserve currency of the world?
I think Trump was very clear about that in his presentation at the Economic Club, that it's very, very important for the U.S. to remain the reserve currency in the world.
Very important. I would say that that's what you believe. You're known for a big bet against subprime mortgages that really paid off. What is the next big bet that you see that's similar to that? Because you really crafted that bet. It didn't really exist when you did it.
Well, I would say it very much depends on who is in the White House and who controls Congress. I'd be very concerned if Harris is elected and pursues the tax plans and other economic plans that she articulated. You alluded to the tax on unrealized gains. If they do implement a 25% tax on unrealized gains, that would cause mass selling of almost everything: stocks, bonds, homes, art. I think it would result in a crash in the markets and a immediate, a pretty quick recession.
People were very concerned, not everybody, but many, when Barack Obama became president. They pulled their money out of the market. Big mistake. During his term, Dow jumped triple-digit percentages. People who didn't like Donald Trump pulled their money out of the market. Big mistake. over time, that stock market jumped to many records while Trump was president. Same with Joe Biden. The market has done incredibly well. My colleague Charles Payne likes to say, whatever you do, don't invest around your politics or pull your money. But you have said that market timing and investor timing will really matter depending on who is president. So are you ready to take that chance?
I think so, and it all
Would
depends.
you pull your money?
It depends on the policy. I think if Harris was elected, I would pull my money from the market. I'd go into cash and I'd go into gold, because I think the uncertainty regarding the plans they outlined would create a lot of uncertainty in the markets and likely lower markets.
You would sell the equities you own?
The ones that are liquid, yes.
Yes. Like there's Madrigal Pharmaceuticals that you really like. You've added, according to your 13F filing, to a name like that. So you would go to cash and gold.
Well, Madrigal, I believe, is a takeover target. So, you know, if that is taken over, it would kind of be uncorrelated with the overall
So it's an arbitrage
market. It's a pre-arbitrage play, yes.
Well, where are you going from here? What's next for you?
Well, you know, I'm still very active in our business and the portfolio we're managing. So, you know, I work every day. So we're pretty excited about the markets.
Well, you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't work every day. John Paulson, great to have you. Please come back.
Thank you, Liz.
Really appreciate it.